Welcome to The Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world hearing their stories about growing a business. Today's guest is going to share how she takes a completely different approach to coaching and some great stories around that. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, we're here today with Erin Pheil. She is a successful entrepreneur, consultant, and speaker who has discovered the secret to achieving exponential results in life and business for her clients without requiring endless ongoing coaching. Erin is the founder of the MindFix Group, a revolutionary mental optimization program for high achievers with a success rate exceeding 95%. With the MindFix Group, Erin aims to deliver revolutionary programs that alleviate the self-sabotage our own minds create that holds us all back, and to help high performers achieve even more with minimal effort. Erin, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here.
So my first question for you is, what would you say is the biggest thing that either you did or you are doing that's helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
Put together a team and stop thinking that I could do everything on my own. There's absolutely no way that without the support of my team that I could be having the impact that I am on the world, and also creating enough time and space for me to be living the life that I want. So hands down, stepping back and bringing aboard people to support.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great one. I would agree with that as well. But I want to actually go into that a little bit because for some people, I think like our audience is typically like independent creators and entrepreneurs. And so like if you start to have a team, then what happens to like the label of solopreneur? Are you really a solopreneur anymore when you have a team? And I think that there's also the idea that some people, maybe they're considering or getting to the point that they want to have some kind of a team, but they also don't see themselves having like this enormous team of ever having like 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people working with them. And personally, like even myself, I like the idea of growing slowly and deliberately so that like I enjoy everybody that I'm working with. And I rather, even if it comes at the cost of maybe having less of an impact at the same speed, I rather do it the way that I'm doing it. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, should someone like me even consider like, well, can you build it faster? Can you get more people? And what would you say to somebody who's saying like, well, I don't know about having a team. I don't know about even hiring that first person, even though I'm kind of at the stage that I'm ready to do that. Should I stay a solo entrepreneur or get people to help me?
Yeah. I think people don't have to ask the question of, do I want a team? Should I be a solopreneur? Am I an entrepreneur? What am I building? Like that could be a really big question. I think what is absolutely fabulous, and I'm not like the stereotypical, like, I'm going to go build 50 different companies and I jump into all of these things. I'm a very slow, methodical, sequential kind of human myself. I think what can be so fabulous is just, instead of, some people like to jump into the deep end, you can just kind of dip your toe in the water and take like that first step in. Like you can find someone who can like come and cook a couple meals for you, for $40 a week or something, and then suddenly you have 5 extra hours on your Fridays, like for just a little bit of money. Or maybe you can find a bookkeeper who's willing to do some trade, and suddenly that frees up 10 hours of your month. So it's less about, do I want a team? Do I not want a team? And more about, where are some areas of like, as I look at all the tasks that I do, let's look at the ones that I'm not that good at, that drain me, that take a lot of my time, that if I could hand some of these over and get some support, suddenly you have support. And that idea of building a support team, maybe they're not like, this is an employee or this is my COO, but if you have people outside that can support you, suddenly you get to start examining within your business. Like I'm sending out these same emails every day. What if I hired someone, in another country, or just the friend next door? What if I hired someone to come in for a couple hours every week and do follow-up phone calls. And so it really is, where can I receive a bit of additional support versus building a team for those who aren't like, that's my direction. That's a far more powerful, I think, question that people can dip their toe into the water and start seeing what it's like to be supported and have free time created within their schedule.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's the perfect way to look at it, because every entrepreneur, like, you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do, even if you think about the things outside of your business, like cooking meals and everything, as you mentioned. So what are some things that are draining you, or that you don't want to spend your time doing, that you can offload first?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the question to ask. And that's why when I said meals, like, that was the first thing that actually was so exciting for me, is I found someone locally, and it was like $15-20 an hour, and she makes all of my food for the week. And yes, I could have hired like a new person or something, but that frees up so much time for me and makes my life so much easier, because I hate cooking. That, like, small steps like that can make a big difference in your personal time and in your business.
Definitely. All right. So with the MindFix program, what inspired you to create that? And can you share a little bit of the story of how you started it?
Sure. I wasn't inspired to create it until it kind of hit me in the face. So it wasn't something I had planned for a long time. It kind of fell, like, no, it didn't fall into my lap. It hit me in the face. I was running a web agency for 15 years or so, and I knew I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I tried doing all these programs to figure out what's my unique ability and what do I want to do next, and I worked with a career consultant and couldn't figure anything out. I ended up, very long story short, I ended up going through a phase of chronic pain. No doctors could figure out what was causing the pain or why I was in so much pain. I started to become really depressed. I started to get really anxious. And then there were no specialists that could help me get out of that. So I was in pain and sad and anxious, and it was just a big mess. And couldn't find help for any of it. And so there was a day when I was like, I have to figure this out myself, or else I'm in big trouble. And so I applied my entrepreneurial spirit. I went and tested things. I became my own science experiment. I tried 50 different things. I mixed and matched. I found certain things that worked for me. And ultimately, I boiled down what works and what doesn't work. I actually have a psychology degree, and I found that a lot of what I had learned didn't necessarily serve me in moving forward towards rapid change and being able to feel better about my life. So I came up with kind of this new way of thinking, this new model that allows people to do what traditional coaching and traditional therapy doesn't. So people are able to see changes and results in weeks or a few months instead of years or decades.
Awesome. So as I mentioned in the intro, what you say is that this mental optimization program designed for high achievers and has a success rate exceeding 95%. So what would you say contributes to the success of it, and how do you measure success? Because I think, like, that's a crazy high number, 95%.
It is crazy high. A lot of it, honestly, it's because we're so strict about who we work with. We have a very, very strict application process. And then after someone applies, and then we have a conversation with them, like, a small percentage of the people that apply end up working with us, because it's all about good fit. If we just accepted everybody, our success rate would not be that high at all. We look for people who are motivated, who are ready to change, who show up, who are just like, I'm in and I'm committed, and let's do that. We also, over the past 3 or 4 years, really paid attention to the people that we weren't able to help, and we built that into the application. So even if they look great, we found out if, for example, if you're in severe chronic pain, or if you have nervous system dysregulation and you are so nervous just to be in your body, and you have so much anxiety that just being around your house every day or being at work, you're always like, I'm not okay. There's other steps that you need to take first. Or, for example, we found out the hard way if someone uses cannabis every day, regularly, that we aren't able to help them. So as the business continued, we found the things where we couldn't help and baked that into the upfront application process. And that's allowed us to screen out the people that we aren't able to help and make sure that the majority, the vast, vast, vast majority of the people that do come in, we're already pretty clear that we're going to be able to help them by the time they start working with us.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really great advice, and something that like every course creator, coach, every business owner should pay attention to. Figuring out like who are the people that you can really help the best, and realizing that you can't help everybody. Because like you said, like if somebody's not ready to like work on themselves or accept your help, like it's going to be an impossible journey for you to even try to help them. And like I think it's not only for like coaching offers and things like this, but like I can relate to that even like with like contracts. It made me somehow think of stories working with clients with like my web design agency when I first started in business, and realizing like, okay, like I had this bad problem client, and realizing that actually like if my contract said certain things, it basically would have said like, you can't be this person. And so like the application process like that you're mentioning, like it's the same kind of idea. So like if you're not a coach, if you don't have a course or something like that, and you're listening to this, the idea can even apply to something like the contracts that you have, or even your calls, your sales calls, things like that.
Mm-hmm. It can apply to everybody. I'm actually relearning that right now as I'm giving talks at conferences or keynotes and presentations. And I would start getting feedback when I was speaking to very large groups. And it was like some people would say too much of this, and other people say not enough of this. And I realized as I was trying to make everybody happy, it just didn't fit. And it really is about like, who do you serve best, and focus on that, because when you start trying to serve everyone, it frustrates you, your success rate goes down, it frustrates the other people, everything becomes so much harder.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned how MindFix and what you're doing you feel is different than a lot of like traditional coaching and psychology. So what's the problem that you would say with like traditional coaching, and how are you differentiating yourself then?
Yeah, there's two things at least, and I want to make it very clear, I'm not talking about all therapy or all coaching. I'm talking about much of it, and a lot of what I experienced personally over 25 years that didn't work for me. A lot of coaching, traditional coaching and therapy, they do two things. They work solely with the conscious mind. So we'll sit and we'll try and problem solve. Well, why are you still talking to this person if they're mean to you? I don't know why I'm talking to them. It doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. You shouldn't do it. And it's like we try to deal with things as if everything is a math problem and everything is solvable from our conscious mind, when in reality, most of the problems when we're stuck and we're not making progress are in our subconscious mind. The problems are beneath the surface. So we're trying to solve through talk therapy and logicking when the issues are beneath the surface. The second thing is a lot, especially with coaching, a lot of coaching is fantastic in helping people take action, and it gives people more to do. I worked with coaches, and I mean, I was doing gratitude exercises, and I was eating properly, and I was getting enough sleep, and then I was using my calendar in a certain way. And I had a to-do list of 30 things to do every single day just to be happy and be productive. And it was just like, okay, I'm going to work with this coach. Here's more you need to do. And then there's more forms to fill out. And I got exhausted just thinking about it. It was so exhausting. So a lot of coaching is additive. Here's another strategy. Do more meditation. Do more journaling. Let's do more. With MindFix, instead of working with the conscious mind, we work with the subconscious mind, where most problems are kept. If we could figure it out with our minds, we would. But we get stuck because we're trying to figure out with our conscious mind what's below the surface. And two, instead of adding, you need to do more. Everything we do is about subtracting. So Instead of, if you're covered in, you're having pain in your arm, if you're covered in splinters and shrapnel, instead of putting ointment and bandages on, which which is adding, we want to pull the splinters out. We want to pull out the reason why you're having the problems so that they don't come back. So in a nutshell, to summarize, a lot of coaching and therapy help people manage their problems and cope with their symptoms. We're going to help you cope with your anxiety. We're going to help you manage your frustration and overwhelm. What we look to do at MindFix is, if we subtract the root cause of why those are happening, there's nothing left to cope with or manage. The symptoms and the problems are actually not there anymore.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's a great analogy about the splinters. So, can you share a maybe particular moment or experience that really made you realize the impact of your program and like what it could have on people's lives?
Yeah, I can actually share one of the most profound personal experiences. I noticed it. I was living a pretty successful life. I had a partner and I had a great house and I lived in the mountains and a great business. And yet I just was not happy. And everything I did stressed me out. I remember it got to the point where I would go out in my leisure time. I'd go out for bike rides with friends. And there was a day I was in the forest, the sun is coming down, there's like a creek and a waterfall to the side, there's birds chirping, it's 70 degrees, it's gorgeous, mountain, like dream bike ride with probably 5 or 6 friends. Like, this is what I live life for. And I remember in my head, it was just like, I'm too slow. They're not gonna want to go out with me anymore. I'm not fast enough. This is embarrassing. I'm gonna have to apologize. Go faster. You're not good enough. You need to go home. And it was just like, that was what was in my head.
Wow.
And I was like, I've worked my whole life to be able to do something like this, and all I can think about is how I'm not good enough. Like, that's what my life had become. I'd go snowboarding. I'd go for a walk. I'd be on a call with a client, and that was the noise in my head, was just this critic. And so what I remember is, in doing this work, there was a day, the following summer, I went out for a bike ride, and I remember I was the slowest one on the ride. And I remember coming in and everybody was waiting, and I got to the bottom, I was like, thanks. And everybody's like, you're so happy. And I was smiling, my mind was quiet, I was smelling like the pine of the forest, and my heart was beaming, and I was like, there's no voice. There's no criticism. I'm not embarrassed. There's no shame. There's no judgment. I'm enjoying this. I am fulfilled. And it was just the same experience on the outside, but the way I experienced it on the inside was night and day. And then that was happening in work, in my relationships. Like, every time, like, that was rippling out. That was my new life. It was quiet, and I could enjoy the things that I had worked for. So that was the shift, the before and after. And that's what we see with our clients too.
Awesome. Well, is there like a moment that like you feel like sparked that change? Like what kind of like preempted that, I guess, to make that big difference happen?
It's so interesting, right? Because we're talking about, I had gone to therapy and I'd gone to coaching for so many years. And it was like, why do you think you're so difficult on yourself? Let's journal about that. Maybe it was because of your childhood. And I'd talked about it for 20 years, right? Like, and nothing worked. When I did this work, it was like, okay, what would have you thinking all these thoughts about you're not good enough? The reason I was having these thoughts is, at the core, I had a belief, a conscious programming looping in my mind over and over that simply said, I'm not good enough. It was like a tape that was playing in the back of my head. If I have that tape playing, then of course I'm going to have thoughts of, I'm too slow. They're not going to like me. I'm not fast enough, right? Because I have this tape, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So I see the world through that. So what happened is, in this work, hit stop on that tape. And the tape stopped. I'm not good enough no longer exists in my subconscious. That belief is not there. I don't have that. The day that belief went away was like the day my life changed, because suddenly I no longer saw the world through that lens. And so when you can change those tapes and stop the tapes that are playing in the background, the rest of your life changes after that.
Awesome. So yeah, I think like a huge reason why people fail is they have these limiting beliefs. So for those listening and for how you work with your clients, like how would you approach those who have like these deep-seated limiting beliefs that they may not even be aware of?
Yeah, one of the first things that people can do is begin to uncover them and bring them to the surface, bring them from outside of their awareness up to the surface so they can go, okay, they're here. Because you can't work on anything unless you're aware of it. So the easiest way, the most fun way to find out what are some of the programs, the beliefs that are running in the back of my mind is you take a two-step process. And this is something anybody can do. It can be something that can be really fun to do with friends. It can be something you can do on your own. But the first thing is you write down, actually it's 3 steps. I'm going to go 3 steps. You write down a pattern, something that you do, and you get as clear as possible on it. Like what's something you're experiencing that you wish you could change? For example, I just chatted with a fellow who said, I have a pattern of when it comes time to talk about money on sales calls, I freeze. And I don't know what to say and I stop talking. He said that happens over and over and over again. That's my pattern. So he would write that down. And then the step 2 is what are the thoughts that occur? What are the thoughts and feelings that occur during this pattern? So I asked the fellow, like, what are you thinking? He's like, well, my body freezes, but I'm thinking, don't say anything about money. Don't say anything about money. Don't talk about money. And I said, what are you feeling? He's like, nervous and scared. I was like, okay, so write that down. That was his step 2. Step 3 is simply ask the question, what would I have to believe to be true to experience those things in step 2? So I asked him, what would you have to believe to be true to feel nervous and anxious and have the thought, don't talk about money when you're on a sales call? And he sat for a while and he's like, let me think. He's like, he just said, it's not okay to talk about money. And I was like, what? He's like, where did that come from? And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, oh, he's like, well, I was raised, and he started talking about his upbringing and what part of the country he was brought up in and what religion he was brought up in and what his family used to say. And it all started to come out. And so what's interesting is here's the key takeaway. Many people sometimes forget. He was shocked when those words came out of his mouth. He's like, I didn't realize I believe it. So a lot of times we'll say something and go, I don't believe it. It's not, do you believe this? It's, does a part of you believe it to be true? So oftentimes I'll say, do you believe that you're stupid? No. Does a part of you believe you're stupid? Oh, well, yeah. I mean, like a little part. Like maybe that's okay. Or do you believe you're not capable? Of course I'm capable. Is there any part of you that doubts if you're capable? Oh, well, there's maybe a little part. So when you ask the question in that way, is there a part of you? Suddenly it's much easier to start exploring that universe of, well, only a part of me. Only a part of me.
Got it. So I think that it's one thing to be able to like uncover those limiting beliefs and even to get past them. But I feel like it's very common that even if you get over one limiting belief, it's not the end of that in life, right? There can be other things that creep up or start to happen where you have these new limiting beliefs that occur, right? So would you say there's any like effective practices or habits that you've seen a higher achiever cultivate to kind of maintain a healthy mindset over long term?
Good question. So there are the conscious old school therapy and coaching techniques that have you try and convince yourself you don't believe something. You believe that you're something, say the opposite. Affirmations, things like affirmations. When you use the old school techniques, you have to keep using them because they're not actually getting rid of the beliefs. You're trying to overwrite them. You're trying to put bandages on. There are so many technologies and mind technologies and tools out there that have happened and been discovered and are being used in the last 10 years. We use probably 6 or 7 different ones at MindFix. depending on what works for each person. And when you use a tool that works, when you use a tool that actually clears a belief, it really is gone. Think about a belief in Santa Claus. Think about a belief in the Tooth Fairy. Think about a belief in the Easter Bunny. Like when that went and that was gone, it's gone. It doesn't come back. You don't have to maintain it. So if you are using proper real techniques, and that goes back to like, what's the difference between rapid transformation and real change versus old school techniques, is you don't have to maintain or keep doing it if it really works. If you pull out the splinter, the pain's gone. It's not coming back. There's no more bandages. It doesn't hurt anymore. And you move on. Now, you may go, oh gosh, now I notice there's another splinter, and you can keep working over time, and self-improvement and growth is a gradual, continual process. But you shouldn't have to keep going back and working on the same thing if you really have an effective tool to help work through that.
Got it. So I heard something that Alex Hormozy said that I thought he put it in a very interesting way, where he was talking about how a lot of people struggle with beliefs that they have. And the problem is that we believe certain things to be facts when they're not facts. They are really, truly our beliefs. So
Yes.
what do you think about that? Would you agree with that? And is there anything in your program that you do where you kind of have that realization with your clients, where like, okay, this thing, like, what are things that you think are facts that are actually really just your beliefs?
Most everything, unless it's something like I am a male, or this is a computer screen, or I am carrying a drink, when it comes to conclusions about oneself or about the outside world or success, the vast majority of those conclusions are literally beliefs, something that someone can have a different perspective on. And the entire work that we do at the foundation of MindFix is helping people shift what they think is fact and belief, this is true, to that's just one possibility. Like, people come in and go, well, you have to work very, very hard in order to be successful. And to say, well, some people do, and you might now, but that doesn't have to be real. To break apart these things from being rigid, rock solid truths to one of many truths is where the magic lies. So yeah, the way that Hormozy put it is very well said.
Cool. All right. Can you think of maybe like another story? I think you gave a great one of yourself with the bike rides. Can you think of a story where maybe your clients like faced either self-doubt or imposter syndrome in their journey, and what would you suggest to people out there to try to overcome that? Mainly like the idea, I guess, of like imposter syndrome.
Okay, so share a story first and then advice? Okay. So yes, we've worked with many very successful people who have had severe imposter syndrome. And what we find is, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. We worked with a woman who ran she was in her second year of business, and she was just starting to get interviewed on podcasts. And she was saying, I can't do it. I'm not good at it. Like I haven't been around enough. I don't have degrees in my field. I'm not advanced enough. I've only helped a few hundred people, and my competitors have helped over 10,000. Like, who am I? Who's going to want to listen to me? And she was first. So she was turning down all these interview opportunities. People were reaching out to her to promote her business, and she was saying, no. And they're like, why? She's like, because I shouldn't. So even though people wanted to, she was just like, no, I'm an imposter. I'm a fraud. Like, if they, they'll find me out. And it was really interesting because you could take her through that 3-step process. Her pattern is, I say no to all promotional opportunities. She was thinking, I'm a fraud. I don't deserve it. And I feel bad when people reach out. And so when we're like, what would you have to believe to be true? I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, I'm a phony. You can't be successful if you don't have advanced degrees. And if you haven't been in business for more than 5 or 10 years, you can't possibly be very good. It was a handful of maybe 10 or so of those types of beliefs. We stripped them away, just like the beliefs in Santa Claus. And at the end, she was like, oh my God, I'm going to call those people back. I can totally be on all of those. And she didn't have to work on it. Her fear did, and her frustration and guilt, like none of that came back. She was excited and she just took off. She forgot she ever was like saying no to the opportunities to begin with. So imposter syndrome, despite all the articles, I just saw one the other day that say you'll have it forever. It's only there because of the programs that are looping in the background. And when you can come in and hit stop, on a handful of them, imposter syndrome completely disappears. We've seen it over and over and over again. In fact, it's one of the more common challenges of entrepreneurs. I read something recently that 84% of all entrepreneurs of all success levels, of all income levels, have some form of imposter syndrome. And many people say it doesn't go away. And it's like, it doesn't go away unless you subtract the root cause of why it's actually there. Then it can go away in a matter of hours.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah, it actually, that made me think of something that I experienced, how I experienced imposter syndrome early on in my business, where I started my business out of high school, actually. And so I was 18 years old when I started my business, and I never went to college. And I had this problem of doubting myself because thinking like I'm too young or inexperienced, like people are going to have a problem to want to work with me. And the realization that I had that you're right, once I had this realization, it completely solved it. And that was realizing that the people who knew me, like personally, and were clients, they would act a little bit differently around me because they knew like, oh, I'm just a young kid or whatever. Whereas the people who didn't know me personally, there was nothing in the way that they acted or treated me or decided to work with me or not that had anything to do with my age. And once I realized that, I realized that like it's not the problem I thought it could be.
Amazing. Very cool.
Cool. All right. Also curious about like what would you say to high achievers who are struggling like balancing work and personal life and trying to like avoid the dreaded burnout?
Whew. You know, one of the most valuable things that I learned along my journey was that if I don't schedule and plan in free time, it doesn't happen. I treat it as if it was an appointment or a doctor's visit or a surgery, and I put it into my calendar and make sure it's there, because if I don't, I will burn out. If I don't mix in free time and time off and time to think, I'll keep working. That's just my tendency. And then that creates burnout over the long run. It's easy to keep working, but everything starts to go downhill. And I actually, in studying the concept of flow, the more you work and the more you allow yourself to work, the more you get lazy. And there's no incentive to work smarter because you're like, I'll just work harder and I have more time. So I can write a long email and not think too much about it. Or I don't have to hire someone else because I'm working for 3 more hours. But if it's like, if you create a constraint and you're like, you only have this much time to work, suddenly you have to think smarter. You have to write things quicker. You have to stay focused. You can't be on social media. All the things that you can do when you create all of this space and there's no free time, you get lazy and you take up all of that time. When you compress it, you're forced to work smarter.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's this saying that the task or project that you have will fill the space that you've given it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that the constraints are so powerful. And I can give a number of examples of how that made an impact in my own life and business. And I would say like, I've had different stages of my life and business where I've had on one hand where I guess I kind of stopped working. I kind of almost like retired in 2017. And after that, it was hard to like work 40 hours a week or even close to that. Like I had to like learn the exercise of working again, I felt like. But then so like I had no problem giving myself free time, but then in getting better and better at that, I feel that you become so good at working that, just like you said, like I have to now, like I have to schedule that free time for myself, because otherwise it's too easy to say like, okay, now I'm really good at working, I can just keep doing that.
Yeah, totally.
But like where I would say like the constraint was super powerful was I spent a lot of time early on in my business in my 20s traveling, and I by the time I turned, even actually before I turned 21, I said I'm gonna go travel the world. Don't know when I'm coming back. Didn't buy a return ticket, and that was something that I think some people had a doubt, thinking like, how are you productive? Like, what, are you just on vacation? You're not working now? I said, no, I'm still working. I'm just living in different places. And what was so powerful about that as a constraint for me is that if I was going to move between countries every couple months, then there was that hard deadline of, okay, I'm on this flight at this time. So like certain things have to be done in work before that flight, and before I have to go and learn that new place for a couple days, and I'm going to not be quite as productive. And so actually in that sense, like knowing that every couple months or so there's this deadline of that I'm literally going to a completely new country, that actually was
Yeah.
really helpful in terms of productivity for me.
Phenomenal. So cool.
Yeah, thanks. So on the show, we like to have each of our guests ask a question to the audience. You could ask our audience anything, whether it's something like kind of introspective you want them to think about, or something you're just genuinely curious about. What would that be?
Yeah. So when I go and I give talks, I put up a screen behind me, and it lists all of the things that we've helped people with at MindFix Group. And I would love to invite people to think about their biggest thought challenge, or emotional challenge, or behavioral challenge. So bring to mind whether it's anxiety, imposter syndrome, anger, difficulty setting boundaries, money fears, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of setting boundaries, people pleasing, whatever it is. The thing that just costs you the most in terms of time or energy, money, sanity. And what I'd like to invite people to ask themselves is, what would be possible for me if this was no longer in my life? Because that's what is possible for every single person who's listening today. These things that we used to think we have to deal with for the rest of our lives, the technology and what's possible these days with the work that companies like ours do, allows people to be totally clear of these things in a matter of weeks or months. And that wasn't possible in the past. So I would love to invite people to sit for a moment and just daydream and be like, if that wasn't in my life, how would that impact my family, my friendships, how I feel about myself, my free time, my money, my business? And just allow yourself to daydream for a bit, because that is actually possible now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really powerful question. All right. Well, Erin, before we get going, where else can people find you online?
Yeah, I invite people to go and check out our website at mindfixgroup.com. There's 2 pages there that are really great to check out. There's a results page so you can see what's possible for people just like you. And then we also have a free training. It's just an hour, and it is packed and helps people understand how rapid transformation, instead of having to continue to manage and cope with your symptoms, is possible. And it breaks down the science behind that.
Awesome. All right, Erin, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.